Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Motoryacht podcast. I'm your host, Editor-in-Chief Dan Harding, joined by my two favorite senior editors, Chris Dixon and Owen Burke. Gentlemen, what's going on?
Good morning.
Greetings, Dan.
Excellent. Well, we're going to kind of pick up where we left off on a previous pod where we get into the stories behind the stories of our recent issues. We did this with the October issue. Thought it was a lot of fun giving people insight into kind of how the sausage was made, but right before we launch into that and get into some of the dirt, just want to give a quick shout out and a thanks to our sponsor, Imtra. Sleipner's revolutionary vector fin stabilizers are a true game changer for motor yachts over 45 feet. The unique patented curve of the fins makes them up to 110% more efficient than straight fins, providing stabilization both at anchor and underway. The curved design of the fin, combined with its lightweight construction, also creates lift when underway, improving the ride while also saving fuel. Learn more by contacting the experts at Imtra or visit their website at imtra.com. Now on to the episode. So, gentlemen, thinking about where to start here, I feel like, Owen, we got to kick it to you with actually not the first feature that you wrote for the magazine, but the first feature that you undertook for us, getting aboard a Hunt 63 bound for northern waters and parts unknown. But can you give us a little background into what it was like from getting the first assignment of, hey, like you to get on this boat to finally getting on it? It was a little harried, I'm led to believe.
Yes. So yeah, we had this lead from a Hunt representative, uh bit of a character coming up the coast with
Mhm.
his newly commissioned Hunt, sort of a unique customization. He didn't have the fly bridge on his 63. That's the only one I think to date without a fly
Right.
bridge. He's got this thing painted scarlet red. It's it's a statement
Yeah.
that's maybe not quite in line with your usual Hunt. And so he had a couple of hiccups on his way up north. He was coming up from Jupiter, Florida.
Hmm.
Um, Came up with some friends, I believe, for the first half, and then had a prop issue. And got way late in Ocean City, Maryland. So we're waiting. We wanted to hop on this boat and
Yeah.
go up the Hudson with him. And we're waiting for word, and we're getting crickets for weeks. And then all of a sudden, one day I get a call. Like, I don't even have this guy's phone number yet. I'm just vaguely aware of his existence and positioning.
Yeah.
I get a phone call. I think I was making coffee. I come down and I see a text saying, I'm going to be at, this landing in New Jersey in 2 hours. And I thought, well, that must be my guy. So I call back. Sure enough, it is. And yeah, by now I've got about an hour and a half to make an hour and a half trip. So, you know, camera gear, everything is just like hastily shoved into a bag in a
Yeah.
flurry, run to the train, to the subway, which is not running. Um, Immediately call an
Classic.
Uber. I'm like barking down this guy's neck, like faster, faster, get around this traffic. We need to cut across town. Let's take the tunnel. Don't take, all of that. I make it with about 30 seconds to spare, and the guy's just about ready to leave the gas dock, but he has to have some sort of altercation with the management there. I don't know what it was about. Um, but yeah, suffice to say, I made it by the skin of my teeth, and we had an interesting trip up. I think he's just a certain type of person.
Aren't we all?
And
Yes.
he was a little on edge, which, understandably, new boat, big boat, a lot
Mhm.
of money. He's
On a
been
schedule.
transitioning north for a month or so. Yeah, he's behind schedule.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, tension was high between him and the captain and him and the boat. Caught in the crossfire a little bit. Uh, yeah, it was not champagne and caviar on the deck as I was expecting on the way up. It
Mhm.
was like,
Mhm.
can we push this thing a little faster?
Yeah.
And but we made it in one piece.
Now, where'd you actually end up?
I ended up in Kingston, which is a bit south of Albany, where he was hoping to
Mhm.
make land that day.
What a reminder too. It's like this often used cliche, but I think it's so true that one of the most dangerous things on the water is an itinerary, right? Or and having a strict
Hmm.
schedule. That's when you start pushing it, and that's when chaos tends to ensue. But it was crazy about this too. I'm now remembering I was out on paternity leave. My son was just born, and so I found out all about this whole thing like weeks later. But it was a good sign that you were, to how much hustle you had to get across the Jersey, get on the boat, and not knowing where you were going to end up. I mean, I think that speaks to. I think you might just make it, Owen. I think you seem like one of us.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, a
you've made
lot of
it.
the
You've
time
made
we
it
don't
this far.
exactly know where we're going to end up. So that's kind of the beauty of the job too.
Yeah,
Nah,
yeah.
you definitely have to roll with it. And it is interesting too. We were just talking offline a little bit about how you maybe readers would think these stories would come about, about really organized, calm, but so many times we're dealing with boats and boating and weather and boaters. So these things are moving all over the place. That was the case with the story I did with the Fleming 85, a boat that magazines have been chasing for years now that this model has been out. But what so often happens, these guys they build their dream yacht, and then what do? They go off cruising. Who You certainly can't blame them. But I was really lucky, and I think we're one of the first outlets, at least in the United States, to get aboard a Fleming 85, and it's the first Fleming 85 enclosed bridge. Lucky enough, a Power Motoryacht reader saw that we posted a picture of his boat to our Facebook page. He reached out in the comments, and this is one of my favorite social media interactions ever, where we were lucky enough he invited us aboard during his summer cruise, and not only got amazing insight into just an incredible boat and what it was like building this yacht, but to see how a couple is really using it. They got thousands of
Mhm.
miles under their keel already, and many many thousands more to go. But I quick shout out to Tim Armand and his wife Lisa for inviting myself and digital director John Turner out for the day. It was really memorable. Got a lot of great content, and actually a future podcast with Tim. So, for the millions of people listening around the world, you have to stay tuned for that one. It was a really, really interesting conversation. But then, I guess sometimes when we're not chasing these boats down, it feels like every feature story has got a fair amount of chasing and travel nightmares and logistics. But in the rare case where it really works out is at the boat shows, which kicking it to you, Chris, you represented Power Motoryacht at the Cannes Yachting Festival in
I
September,
did.
and really just did an unbelievable job. I mean, I think
Thanks, man.
you how many boats you've reviewed in written format already, but plus the countless videos and everything else, you came out with a ton of content. So, I mean, maybe a little bit about what your first con show was like, and then
Yeah.
a couple of the boats that you tested for this issue.
I'd never been to that part of France, and have spent time in the country, but never, never been to Cannes or Cannes, and yeah, I loved it. It was fascinating. We also spent a night in Antibes, which is a town I highly recommend. Between Nice and Cannes, it's really a not only is it a yacht center, it's a fascinating coastal French village, much more sort of centralized than Cannes was. And the thing that was fascinating to me about the yachting festival, well, I mean, there were a bunch of things, but how much they're able to compress into a relatively small space there, and the way that if our listeners ever have a chance to go, it's just such a different kind of scene. And I mean, some ways it's similar to say Lauderdale or Miami, but just that setting and the boats being, jammed into these really tight confines, with Cannes as the backdrop. is fascinating. And it was there were more power boats this year
Mhm.
than they've had in the past, I gathered. And so we actually went between Canto and Viewport, via, I mean, the old port. And so there was a lot more hustle, a lot more exercise, frankly, than I gathered in the past because we were having to get back and forth, sometimes across pretty stormy, choppy waters. And but yeah, it was I really enjoyed it, and also, again, just was kind of, I'm still kind of tripping out on the diversity of boats that I got to see and drive there. I two of the main ones that I sea trialed were as different as night and day. They were the
Mm.
Axopar's new 29 CCX center console, and then an absolute 70 Nevada, which are, they were both Apex boats, but
Sure.
with such different purposes. And I had a hell of a fun drive, particularly on the Axopar. I have to thank Jan Erik Vitala, who is one of the founders of the company, for taking me out, in pretty choppy conditions. I mean, we were driving that boat 40 knots in really confused 3 to 4 foot seas. Not only was there a southerly wind swell coming in, there was all this chop from these other boats out sea trialing, and man, oh man, that was one of the most impressive hulls in that size range I've ever driven. Honestly, you were right. You had said something before we went on the trip. You're like, man, you're going to come off of that with a smile on your face, and yeah, I definitely did. And the Nevada too. I mean, that's just a beautifully conceived boat, by Absolute. The Flybridge was just really a wonder to behold. Driving the boat from up there, and it's a big yacht. It's not as responsible as a 29 CCX Axopar, but it was still,
Sure.
you could still turn the thing on a dime, and shoot, if I had the resources, and was looking at a yacht, that'd be a strong consideration for me. It was a hell of a boat. Among the many others that I saw, it was really something.
Well, that's so well said, and I can't help but think how lucky we are to be in the industry and then have access to such a wide variety of boats that,
Yeah.
on both ends. I mean, I liked how you said it. They were Apex yachts. So like one is kind of an elite level center console from Axopar, and the other being the absolute Nevada 70, elite
Mhm.
in its category. I mean, it just makes me feel lucky because you think of so many people that work in the industry. You work for either a builder or a dealer that has just a couple brands, but it's
Yeah.
the diversity of stuff that we get to go on is really lucky. And another thing I like that you said that I never really thought of this, as thinking of our readers, what a time they would have going to the Cannes Yachting Festival. So it's
Hmm.
like I hear so many times, oh, we go to the boat show every year, we go to Lauderdale every year. Some of the great things with Cannes, it's like the food, the
Yeah,
culture.
man.
Let's talk about the prices. I mean, ostensibly, a lot of our readers are maybe in a different category than we are, but like reasonable flights
Yeah,
over
seriously.
there, really great Airbnbs and hotels all over the place, reasonably priced, I have to
They
say.
are. They are.
You would think going to con is again just for, you know, super yacht owners or the incredibly wealthy. I mean, it
Not.
really is attainable, and what an experience our readers would have if they made the jump over there. It's so different in like the
Well, and,
best
and it
ways.
is like you said, it was such an easy trip for me, because I mean, I live in Charleston. It was a flight to Atlanta, and then a flight straight to Nice, and then
Mm,
an Uber down, and then we had this great Airbnb in this historic house. Just I
yeah.
mean, it was maybe a mile walk, or
Mhm.
not even that,
Yeah.
and it was an affordable place. It was the food was tremendous, and again, it wasn't that expensive. And
Yeah.
so it's really an experience. And just
Mhm.
the way that, the way that Mediterranean Europeans live. I mean, just after after their day at the yacht festival, there's cafe after cafe after cafe after cafe going up. Sometimes these little windy streets or just, out on the main thoroughfare. And it's just an incredible place to people watch too.
Yeah.
Just, unreal. Definitely enjoyed it and definitely recommend, as a bucket list place
Mhm.
for folks to go.
Well said. Imtra is a 100% employee-owned company committed to bringing best-in-class products, expert product knowledge, and unparalleled support to the entire marine industry throughout North America since 1952. And now back to the podcast. Thinking of easy trips, and I was like, oh, and I was laughing, remembering all the stuff that you had to go through to get aboard the Hunt. I think maybe we'll give readers a little bit of a tease of our colleague Kenny Wooten's trip to Bermuda on the Palm Beach 70. You always hate to say like any story is your favorite, but this one I think has so much going on behind the scenes that really makes it stand out to
Oh,
me. Where it's, so again, Kenny Wooten's the editor in chief of our super yacht magazine, Yachts International, and he is a lifelong sailor. He's done the Newport to Bermuda race twice, and now he got to experience it, from the powerboat side and absolute luxury. But meanwhile, while he's doing this and he's texting me via Starlink, he's downloading the newest series off Netflix and having cappuccinos and rum drinks out in the cockpit. While this is going on, our other colleague Lydia Mullen from Sail Magazine was in a life raft, moved over. She was actually sailing and racing in the race. Ended up, if you haven't listened to that podcast, you got to check it
gotta
out.
listen to it.
Just scroll down or go to pnymag.com/podcast. But she had this harrowing, to say the least, experience. I mean, literally crammed, cold, wet, hungry, tired, scared, all the feelings. Meanwhile, our boy Kenny over here is he's suffering too because the ice maker was down for a little bit, and the Starlink was down for a couple minutes. But a tale of two very different trips. But Kenny Kenny did an amazing job talking about his past experiences doing it as a sailor, and then now experiencing it through the Palm Beach 70, which is a sponsor boat, a chase boat, and talked about the boat and how his race experiences have evolved. I think that might have been one of my well, that was a story I enjoyed a lot. I hope readers do too.
Oh, and you have a family connection to Kenny's story as well, right?
Yeah, well, I have a family connection to your story too, but um yeah, my father was in the 88 race that Kenny was in, and I believe that was the one that he won.
That your dad
Um
won.
that my father
Yeah,
won. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
So I have to talk with Kenny about that.
that's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. What a small world. So I think why don't we pivot back to you, Owen, and we could touch on the waterfront piece you did with our friends, the Lake Erie locals. Again, there was another story that kind of came out of a podcast, which you did an exceptional job with. I really enjoyed hearing your conversation about how, this young couple got into boating, and like we were talking about, had no boating background. I mean, did that stand out to you as well?
Yeah, I mean that's really inspiring and heartening coming from the boating community. And I mean, I had sailing crammed down my throat from the time I was 6 weeks old. I mean,
Oh,
I never had a choice to not be on a boat, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
You know, that came with different trials and tribulations, but ultimately it allowed me to, go off and live on boats in the middle of nowhere and buy boats in the middle of nowhere and get this job. So, I'm very fortunate and spoiled in that way. And you don't really run across a lot of people in the boating community who found their own way and, forged their own path. I mean, these kids, they were in college, kind of got this idea, oh, our friends are taking us out on their boats on the lake. This is cool. Wouldn't it be cool to have a boat someday? And,
Yeah.
fast forward a little bit, they graduate, they're living together, they decide, oh, let's go to Walmart. We'll get some inflatable kayaks. We can Uber up to the lake and paddle around and dream about someday owning a boat. And then oh, let's buy this trailer that's for sale on the lake. Maybe we can watch the boats and continue
Yeah,
to
yeah.
dream about having a boat. And then then their dream boat was I think like an 18-foot Sea Ray or
Mm.
something like
Yep.
that, came up for sale on the dock. And so they, scratched together some cash. And yeah, they also, between the kayaks and buying that boat, they got a membership with what is it called? Not boats,
Freedom Boat Club.
Freedom
Freedom
Boat
Boat Club.
Club,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so that was an interesting take. I'd never known anyone that was a member there, and they
Mm.
seemed to use the heck out of that, and they
Yeah.
got some water time, and
Mhm.
evolved to the point where they were confident enough to get out on their own. And yeah, hats off to them. And it's also very interesting to learn about that community there,
Yeah.
in Ohio, and the Bass Islands, the Put-in Bay, and
Hmm.
sort of this
Hmm.
kind of quirky Key West like culture that exists up there.
That sounded really cool, actually. I was
Yeah,
like,
Yeah.
and
might need to make a trip up to Lake Erie.
Yeah.
I think so. Um, but yeah, I've never been out on a boat on the lakes, and being a saltwater person, you just don't even really consider it for one reason or another. Plus, it's far
Right.
for
Right.
me.
There's that.
So yeah, it was definitely a nice taste of another walk of boating life, I would say.
Hmm. Hmm. And also, I
Yeah,
mean,
for
interesting
sure.
because also now they're trying to use social media, I think mostly Instagram, to promote bringing other people along with them, which I think is so important. We talk about it, but we have our sport has all the elements, the sun, the escape, the fun. I think that the risk of sounding overly sappy and corny, but I think the world could use a little more time on the water, a little more boating. And it's nice to see that these people who got into it are trying to bring others along for the ride. That's been cool.
They wore so much more gratitude about just having made it into the world of boating than I think I've ever had, even on a great day on the water. It's just like,
Yeah.
Right.
I also love their ambitions too. It's like, they're not satisfied that now they got the bug, right? Like they got hooked. They're going
Right.
to boat shows. They're eyeing the newest Tiara, and it's like, and they seem like a couple. If they stick to it, I could totally see them and a nice Tiara 43 or something one day. And I think our pastime needs that. It needs some people to come into it that are not just born into it. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
for
a
sure.
hopeful tale overall.
huh.
Chris, I'm gonna kick it back to you. And your gear column, you reviewed a stand-up paddleboard, and it's kind of interesting. We're talking about getting people out onto the water, and the kind of the gateway drug was for this
Yeah.
couple. They had the inflatable kayaks from Walmart. Paddleboards seem like a way. It's almost like that people can dip their toes in the water of getting down to their marinas, launching these things, get that connection to the water, and just boaters in general. I think they're bringing stand-up paddleboards with them on their cruises more than ever,
More than
um,
ever.
which makes so much sense. And what's cool is to see that these boards continue to evolve. It was made a big jump to the inflatable boards, which were easy to stow, and I think
Yep.
those have gotten so good. But tell us a little bit about the board you reviewed because it really feels like it's like the next iteration or generation of stand-up paddleboards.
To me, it is. This was the Live Water Sports L4. This is a catamaran paddleboard. And these boards, it was really interesting to me too, because I went to Mobile to do an interview not too long ago. And a couple of the houses, or a few of the houses just right there along Mobile Bay had these boards. And they make a lot of sense that these are very lightweight for their size, very flat deck, catamaran hulls, just full on. The sponsons are maybe 24 or so inches apart, maybe a little bit more. So and what these boards have become sort of they're really good for fishing flats and shallows with really good because they draw so little water, but they're also enormously stable. And because of their design and their shape, because they've got a catamaran, hull in the back, you can put a motor on the back of them. And
Mm.
there's companies that make mounts for these for either a small gasser or an electric motor. We we really put this thing through the paces, this live paddleboard, and I actually got the inspiration from watching a video that Vinny Lasorsa shot of Jimmy Buffett. He had put a motor on the back of one of these, and then I went down the rabbit hole looking at people who've done fishing setups with these boards and that sort of thing, and either with electric motors or with gassers. I think they put a Mercury Avator on the one that Vinny set up, but I would love to try an Avator on the back of one of these. We actually even put a Yamaha Sixer on the back of this, and man, my
That was
son
too
and his
heavy.
buddies, it flew, hauled ass. It went way too fast.
Yeah.
And I said it in the article. It chine walked. I mean, once it
Yeah.
got up to like a
Yeah.
certain speed, you're like, okay, this is not what this thing is made for.
No.
But and it also came with a pair of surfboard fins, and I'm maybe getting too much in the weeds on this, but when you add the surfboard fins to it, it becomes extremely stable to paddle against the wind, and you can pop the fins out if you're coming up into a flat. So it was just brilliantly conceived board. But it was just so interesting to me to see how this is just a real evolution of the stand-up paddle board genre. I mean, these boards are just, they're great for exercise. I take this thing out and go, for really fast paddles with it. But then I also, we can paddle it right up into the flat up from our house and go for redfish. It makes very little noise because of the sponsons. Like if ripples are hitting it, it's really quiet, so it doesn't spook the fish. It's just, yeah, hats off to Live for this piece of equipment.
Well, you did a great job with the review, and in fact, you did such a good job with the review that it really inspired me. I had an old inflatable paddleboard that I started using. Actually, I think I talked about it in my
Yeah.
previous. No, actually, the column that's going to be coming out in our January issue. I mentioned it. I was so inspired. I was like, that sounds so nice. Get out and paddle. Obviously, this is my boatless summer, but first time we went out was incredible. Second time, it cost me my iPhone. So this this gear column, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I think you did a great job, and it's gonna like get a lot of people interested in these boards. But at the same time, guys, waterproof case, don't be cheap. At
Mm-hmm.
$20 is gonna save you an awful lot of heartache.
Damn
As
right.
you're crying in the AT&T store trying to get your photos recovered, it's no good. But yeah, no, that was a great piece, Chris.
Thanks, man. It's fun.
And again, there's so much else to talk about in our December issue. It's a lot of good surprise features, plenty more boat reviews. I hope you guys will, everyone listening will check it out. You can subscribe at pmymag.com/subscribe and stay tuned. Just wanted to also mention we're getting ready for Fort Lauderdale Boat Show. This will come out on a Friday and we're heading down. It is looking like an absolutely jam-packed run and gun show as if ever there was one.
Jam packed.
But I know we're going to come away with a lot of great content. You could catch all of our fastest updates. We're going to have plenty of videos going out on our Facebook and Instagram page at Power Motoryacht. Our newsletters gonna have a lot more of our in-depth reviews, and certainly all our in-depth videos will also be on our YouTube channel. So please, like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is on all those platforms, and follow along. And if you see us, if you guys are down at the show, see us out on the dock, please come say hi and tell us what we got wrong in any of the magazines or anything like that. But
That's
we
right.
we look forward to meeting any Power Mode Yacht readers. So now I want to give a final word from our sponsor, IMTRA. Providing equal stabilizing force to gyros at rest and significantly more underway, while also outperforming all other forms of fin stabilizers, Sleipner's Vector fin stabilizers are simply the best on the market. Available with either hydraulic or electric actuators, Sleipner's stabilizers are quiet, efficient, and proven to last with minimal maintenance, using the same technology as aircraft landing gear and the Mars rover. You learn more at imtra.com.